Project Management Insights, providing project managers with professional development in the interpersonal skills areas of leadership, team building, and communication. Hi, today I want to talk to you about what happens when you go into a meeting or a discussion about a decision that needs to be made, or something is brought up about a decision or a particular piece of work that needs to be carried out. And all of the people in the room remain silent or vigilant, and they all agree. And underneath, or later on, you find out that they didn't really agree. This phenomena is, interestingly, called the Abilene Paradox. Now, the Abilene Paradox is a book, and that book was written by a gentleman who had this very same experience where on a very, very hot day in America, he was sitting with his mother-in-law, father-in-law, and his wife, and they were playing cards. It was a very, very hot day, and they had a car that had no air conditioning. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, he made the suggestion, let's go for an ice cream. Now, the town where they would go for that ice cream was something like 50 miles away. So they had quite a drive in the heat, in the very, very hot part of the day. What happened was his mother-in-law said, okay, let's go. Then his father-in-law said, yeah, okay, let's go. And his partner said, okay, let's go. So they all left the game of cards that they were playing, got in the car and drove the 50-something miles to the place, the town, to get that ice cream. Then they had the ice cream and they got in the car and they drove all the way back. And it wasn't until sometime later on when they were sitting back at home that one of them mentioned that they hadn't really wanted to go to get the ice cream because of the heat and knowing that it was going to be very, very hot in the car. What then happened was an interesting phenomena, because not only did one of them really not want to go, when they all sat and talked about it, it turned out that all four of them had actually not wanted to go, and yet not one of them at the time of the question being raised about going was strong enough to say, no, I don't want to go. How many times have you been in that same space where you've been in a meeting and something's been discussed and inside you, your own instinct was, no, I don't agree with that. And you generally have a very valid reason why you don't agree with it. You might have known from your own experience that that sort of thing won't work. You might just have a gut instinct that it won't work. You might have a lot of questions and feel that it's risky if that was to go ahead. And yet in that meeting, in that space with all of those other people there, you won't be the one to speak up and say, no, I don't agree. No, let's talk about that. Or, I'm concerned about this going ahead. Can we talk about it more? Why is that? Well, let's just look at what happens if we are the one that speaks up. How often have you been in that space of being fearful that you were going to be seen to be the odd person out? You were going to be seen to be the troublemaker. You were going to be seen to be the person that put a stop to a forward movement. How often is that the truth? And that's what stops you from speaking up. Or even worse, you might look stupid. You might think that the people in that room are going to consider that you're stupid if you say, no, I don't agree, or I'm uncertain, I'm not sure about that. And the other thing that will happen is you might have the idea that if you speak up and say, no, I don't agree with it, it will cause conflict. And you don't like conflict. So naturally, you are going to sit on your hands and not say anything. You don't want to be the person that sets off a conflict solution situation. And yet you are doing both yourself and the others and the project a disservice if you don't speak up. Why? Well, let's look at it this way. If there are 10 people in the room and all 10 of those people disagree, or 9 of them disagree with what one person's put forward, and those 9 people don't speak up, and whatever was decided, because nobody spoke up, is agreed and goes ahead, and ultimately those 9 people knew it wasn't the right thing, is that really the best thing for your project? It's not. It can't possibly be the best thing for the project, because ultimately you are not getting the best outcome. Now let's turn it around. What would have happened if you had have been that one person that had the courage to speak up and say, I've got concerns about this. I don't think this is valid. I want to look into this more. I want to say I don't agree. Then what might happen? Perhaps the discussion would be something very, very different. Perhaps you might find that there's other ways that are considered of doing what needs to be done. Perhaps there's a different approach altogether, and that particular idea is shelved and something even better is come up with, or, put into the project further on. So have the courage. Be that person that stands up and says, no, I don't agree, if that is your truth. You may be surprised at what happens. What I've found occurred for me when I started to be that person that stood up and said, I have concerns, I'm not sure, was that a number of other people would come to me outside the meeting afterwards and say, thank you so much for speaking up. I totally agreed. I was feeling unsettled. That's exactly how I was feeling, and I just didn't want to speak up. So you have the courage. You might be surprised at the support that you get. You might be surprised at how many other people will stand up in that space and go along and say, yes, I'm in the same space, I don't agree. It can only be for the betterment of your project. Don't just say no for the sake of it though. This has to be when your own gut is telling you it doesn't feel right for you to say yes. Give an honest no. Speak up about your truth. It's only going to benefit both you, your credibility, and the project longer term. Till next time. Thank you for listening to this Project Management Insights podcast. Be sure to visit projectmanagementinsight.com and sign up for our monthly newsletter or to receive updates on upcoming training.